Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is part of our leadership team series of webinars, and today we're going to be going through the leadership team tools and reports. And what does that mean? It means that most of you that are on the call today are probably brand new to your position here in BNI Connect, whether you're the president or the vice president or the secretary treasurer or the visitor host or growth coordinator, whatever position it might be that you've jumped into. And along with that comes a bunch of responsibilities, a few of them having to do with BNI Connect. For example, if you are the incoming vice president, generally speaking, you're going to be the person responsible for putting in the POMS reports on a weekly basis. That means that after the meeting is over, you will go back to your office, log into BNI Connect, and submit those forms. Today, we're going to show you how to do that. Also, things like assigning the speaker rotation and assigning a mentor and sending a visitor invitation and recording a visitor in the system, and all of that fun stuff is what we're going to tackle today. Then we're going to go through and look at some of the reports that are available for you to peruse and get some wonderful information out of. So, before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things with today's webinar. Firstly, for those of you that are here with me today on Monday, October 3rd, I'd like to thank you guys. You guys are here for a live webinar, and you have some very special things that go along with that. Firstly, you can ask questions. If you have any questions as we're going through the material today, all you need to do is to type that question in. I'll see that question pop up on my screen, and I'll be happy to give you an answer. Of course, if you're not with us live, that means that you're listening to this via recording, and we do record all of our webinars. They are made available in a couple of different places. We do have them on the support site. So if you click the question mark in BNI Connect in the upper right-hand corner, that will take you over to the support site, and you'll see a link for live and recorded webinars, and that's where you'll find the calendar of upcoming webinars and all of the recordings. You can also find them on youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Again, that's youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Now, most of our webinars are about 30 minutes. So this one, however, because we're covering so much material and for so many people, this one tends to go a little bit longer. So it, usually this one, depending on the question, goes about 50 to 55 minutes. Now that said, this is what I do all day, every day. I talk about BNI Connect. I help people with BNI Connect. I answer questions about BNI Connect. So if you have any questions and it goes beyond that time, I am happy to stay here until every single question has been asked and answered. Remember, the only silly question is the unasked question. So one more little housekeeping thing before we jump in, and that is that with this particular webinar anyway, different regions in BNI all over the place, different regions do things slightly differently. And what I mean by that is that, for example, when we first came on, I said that usually it's the vice president that goes in and enters the POMS report on a weekly basis. Well, I know that I work pretty closely with a region out of Florida, the Miami region, where they actually have a special position set aside just for entering the POMS report, and that's a referral tracking person. But not every region does it that way. Most of the time, again, 80–90% of the time, it's the vice president. And the same thing with things like visitors. In some chapters, it's the secretary treasurer that's responsible for recording the attendance of visitors, and in other places it's the VP, and yet in other places it's the visitor host. So as I'm saying things today, think back to your training that you had with your regional officers. They're the ones that define how the process works in your particular region. Now, regardless of who's doing the activity, though, I'm going to show you how it works in BNI Connect. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with BNI Connect here. Now, what we're seeing here is my home screen. By the way, I am a member. I've been a member since 2002, so I've seen the evolvement through multiple systems like BNI Connect over the years. And the home screen is the same for all members in BNI. Obviously, it's going to show them their own personal BNI business information, just like it's showing mine here. It would show the member their personal information. That's some great stuff too, by the way, being able to see their own personal POMS report here. Now, for you vice presidents and leadership team people, one little tip and trick right here on the home screen. Right next to My BNI Business, there's a thing that says My Personal Participation Report. Now, you will undoubtedly get approached by members that say that their statistics are incorrect for whatever reason. I had more than one visitor. I've had more referrals given than that, or that thank you for closed business can't be right. Whatever the question is, the easiest thing to have the member do is to go on to BNI Connect for themselves and click on My Personal Participation Report. Now, this will be a one-year version of the Personal POMS report that's going to show just 1 year's worth of activity here. And of course, there had to be something wrong with my own personal account here. Let me see if I can log in as one of my other test members here, Ricky Martin. And here we go. We're in as Ricky Martin here. Let's see if his personal POMS report is working. Otherwise, I'm going to have to contact the programmers when we're done here. So here's what the personal POMS report looks like for 1 year. And what's great about this is that it will give a week-by-week analysis of what was entered into the POMS report for that person. So that makes it really easy to see where exactly the error was. So a lot of times I've seen, for example, that they ended up with 3,000 one-to-ones, and it's usually just because somebody put $3,000 instead of putting it into thank you for closed business, they accidentally put it in the one-to-one column. So great way to troubleshoot that with the members. And it's also a great kind of reality check for them as well, in that it allows them to go in and really look at their progress, their history. So when you're doing things like membership committee reviews, this is a great report to sit down with the member with. All right, so that said, if you're using the online slips to enter referrals into BNI Connect, for example, submitting referral slips, whether you're submitting the referral slips, the thank you for closed business slips, the one-to-one slips. Let me start all over here. I may have to throw away this recording. This isn't good. Let me just log back into the system here. All right, I apologize for that. I'm going to have to, I think, log in here with Ricky Martin here for the few moments. So if you're using the thank you for closed business slips, for example, to input your thank you for closed business slips on a daily basis as a member, or using the referral slips, for example, to pass referrals in your chapter, this will make the leadership team's job a lot easier, because once you start doing that with BNI Connect, you are able to then automatically that information is put into the POMS report. So for example, my chapter has always done the POMS report. Before BNI Connect, we used to do it by just passing out the slips, and the vice president would go back and take the slips back to their office and count everything out and then have to put them into the POMS report. And that used to take us, anywhere between 45 and 60 minutes on a weekly basis. Now it takes about 45 seconds. So all the vice president has to do is take attendance and go back and submit the report because all the information is already in there. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Now, in order to get to some of the other stuff, though, that we're going to be doing on a daily and weekly basis, we are going to have to go to these scary places that are kind of beyond the home screen in BNI Connect. And for that, we're going to have to use some of the menu items that are up along the top of the screen. So you'll see here we have Network, Operations, and Reports. And that's really where most everything is going to be, under Network, Operations, and Reports. Network is going to be all of the networking components. So it's going to be the groups and the connections, the testimonials, the picture gallery. That's really the kind of the social media aspect of BNI Connect. Operations is going to be the day-to-day operations of running a chapter or running a leadership team. So it's going to be really where you go to do all of your data entry stuff. So for example, when you're entering a POMS report. And finally, reports are going to be where you go into, kind of get information back out of the system. So that's where you're going to go to, really find statistics about your chapter and, find out when members' due dates are and all that type of thing. So what I'm going to do now is Ricky Martin is just a member, so I need to log in with somebody in my chapter that has a little bit higher access, and that's going to be my good friend Alfred E. Newman here. Alfred E. Newman is the vice president of my chapter up in the Shiver region, the Burr chapter. So let's take a look at the operations menu first. And here we'll see down the left-hand side all of the different things that we can do in BNI Connect. So we can manage visitors, entering visitors and recording visitors both before and after a meeting. We've got meeting management. That's really our managing of the meeting itself, so the speaker rotation and the POMS report. We have managing memberships. Now this is where we'd enter applications and renew people and stuff like that. I am not going to get into that today because right now still most of the regions out there send in their applications to the regional office and they're processed that way. For those of you that do your own processing in your region, you probably had training on it separately. Now that said, at the end of today's webinar, if there's anybody out there that needs assistance with how to input applications and things like that, just say the word and I'd be happy to stay on and show that to you. So the next thing is managing goals. So we, as a leadership team, we can track our goals for our chapter throughout the year and see how we're doing with them on a month-by-month basis. Now, I'm also not going to talk about that today. However, we will have a webinar tomorrow, October 4th, at the same time at 3 o'clock, and we're going to do the entire goals program. That's again back to a 30-minute webinar, so I welcome you to join me tomorrow for that. Now, the mentoring program, we can also assign mentors, a mentor and a mentee pair. And what this is designed to do is to walk them through the 6 to 8 week mentoring process, depending on how it is set up in your region. So the way it works is they'll get an email on a weekly basis saying, hey, this is what you should be meeting with your mentor with this week. And the create email function has a couple of things in it for emailing your chapter and a visitor invitation. I'm going to get into that in just 1 second. And then the final thing here is the news functionality. Now, I'm not going to talk about the news functionality. If you'd like to know a little bit more about it, you can click this question mark that's right in front of it. That will take you to the help document about the chapter news function. And really what this is it's kind of a shared bulletin board page that's on your chapter website that you can allow multiple people in the chapter to access in order to put up current events and things like that, without necessarily giving people access to the entire website. So Ernie has a quick question. Who should we speak to if we do not have the admin section or leadership team sections? So do you not have, for example, the mentoring program or meeting management, that type of thing? Or do you mean you don't have this admin one over on the right-hand side? So the admin one, if you're talking about the admin one, I'm not going to get into that today. Really, that has some very special permissions level functions that most people in chapter roles and leadership teams don't have. So if you don't have these things under operations, so if you go to operations chapter and you don't have most of these options, then that's definitely a call to your regional office. That assignment happens on the back end. Once they assign you the position in BNI Connect, then you will have those permissions. Now, the other way you can check to see if you have the permissions, if you go down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a thing that says Profile. If you click on Profile, I'm going to open it in a new tab so I don't lose my spot here. But you can see here that my friend Alfred E. Newman, he has the roles of being a member and also a national administrator for Antarctica. So if you don't see the words, vice president or president or whatever it is that your role is in your profile here, then that would be the reason why you can't access some of those functions. And again, that's something that your regional office or director consultant will be able to help with. And if you're struggling with that, just shoot me an email, support@bniconnect.com. Again, support@bniconnect.com. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction or get you in touch with your regional office. Does that help, Ernie? All right, so I'm going to jump around just a little bit here, but the first function I want to show you is this create email function. And this create email function is really, it's a couple of really great tools in here. The first of which is, undoubtedly you will have to get in touch with your chapter at some point. This is the best way to do that. If you go to create email, email my chapter, this will give you the current distribution list of email addresses for your chapter. So I remember before BNI Connect, I always used to have to go and hit, reply all on whatever last message was in my inbox, and it never went to the right people. So, there's always people that had left the chapter or just joined the chapter that weren't on the list. So you do have to use your own email program here. So I would start my own email. I would grab all these email addresses. Now I do recommend putting them into the BCC line here. Now the BCC line will allow those email addresses to stay private so that if it gets forwarded, then we haven't forwarded off everybody's email addresses. It also cuts down on the kind of the chapter chatter, so to speak. So everybody just, you send out an important message and one person hits reply all, yeah, I got it. Now, well, 30 people just got that message now, and it tends to turn people off to getting messages. So I do recommend the BCC line and using the email my chapter. Now there is an email functionality in BNI Connect, a messaging system up here. Just keep in mind that that messaging system is internal. So unless somebody goes in and specifically checks their new messages in the messaging system, they probably aren't going to get the message. Not only that, but it's not just for your chapter, it's really for all of your connections. So as you are connecting with other people, that list will start to grow and won't be appropriate for sending messages to just your chapter. All right, so I do recommend doing create email, email my chapter. Now let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about the visitor position. And now I do a training just for the entire visitor process in BNI Connect, so I'm going to kind of give you the briefer overview right now. If you'd like the full step-by-step, I do welcome you to join me a little bit later in the month on October 19th, where I'm going to be talking about just inviting and registering visitors. But that said, there is a couple of cool quick tools that I want to show you. The first of which is emailing a visitor invitation. So let's step through the visitor process real quick. Step one is inviting a visitor to your meeting. And this is a great way to, especially help other members in your chapter that might not be as comfortable with inviting, because it kind of takes all the guesswork out of inviting somebody. So if I click on email visitor invitation, what this is going to do is create an email that sends the potential visitor, would you like to visit this chapter, and a means of RSVPing to that as well. Now keep in mind, this should never be the first time somebody is hearing about BNI. This email invitation is meant to be a follow-up invitation to a verbal invite. Remember, we are a word of mouth marketing organization. We are not here to spam people with unwanted invitations. So this really should be, you meet somebody at a networking event. Hey, hi, how are you? You know what? I'd love to invite you to one of my BNI meetings. Would that be okay? Yes, great. Awesome. I'll send you an invitation. That's where this comes in. So let's say I was inviting John Snow to my meeting. He is from Winter Wonderlands. And you know what? I'm going to put my own email address in here. So the email invitation goes to me so you guys can see what this looks like. And finally, we have a personal message. The personal message is going to be up at the top of the email that goes out, and that's what the members or the potential visitor is going to see first. This is your chance to customize that and make it sound like it's coming from you. You may want to remind them that here's the invitation that I promised. So something like great meeting you at the networking event. Here is the invite I promised. Please be sure to RSVP. Okay, so when I click send, that is going to wrap that up in a nice little package and send that off. Now it does go out immediately, and you will also receive a carbon copy of the message. So here's the message I just received. Now because I sent it and I received it, I got the carbon copy and the message here. And this is the invitation. How will you grow your business in 2016? Again, it has that information up at the top. Great meeting you at the networking event. Here's the invite I promised. It then has a brief introduction to what BNI is, the information about your chapter, and the ability to RSVP. So if the visitor now clicks this RSVP, what they can do is register themselves for the upcoming meeting, right? So they click RSVP, and this brings them to the RSVP page. Now, here's an important step. Getting your visitors to pre-register themselves will do two things. Number one, it will change their mindset about attending the meeting. Now, I'm not sure if this has ever happened to any of you, but I know for me a couple of times, once or twice in the past, I've invited a visitor and then the visitor didn't show up to the meeting. A lot of times that happens because A, they either forgot, or B, it was kind of a casual invitation. So, they're just expecting another networking event and it's going to be 100 people there. They don't realize that this is a BNI thing and we have a very structured and organized meeting. So what this does is this confirms their visit with them, which makes them much more likely to actually show up once they've said they're going to show up. So I'm going to choose to attend on the 5th. And this is John Snow from Winter Wonderland. And email address, I'm going to again use my own email address here so you guys can see how this all works. And let's see, I was invited by Jeremy. And we have the captcha code to make sure this isn't a robot, and click submit. So now the person will get an email saying, congratulations, you are confirmed to visit this meeting. Again, this is what I just got with the registration. Hi, John, thank you for your interest. You are officially confirmed to visit the BNI Burr chapter. Not only that, they'll get a 2-day reminder, and the visitor hosts, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and the director consultant all get a notification saying, hey, by the way, you guys have a person coming to the chapter this week. Be sure to welcome them. You may want to give them a call ahead of time. Here's all their contact information and the business that they are going to be looking to represent. The more that you can actually get them engaged in coming to the meeting before they even get there, the better the chances are that they will show up to the meeting and that maybe they would want to submit an application. The other thing this does, though, is it makes it a lot easier for the visitor hosts or the secretary treasurers, whoever are going to be, having to record the visitors after the meeting. And this is an important thing to do because we're keeping a kind of visitor database, if you will, almost a marketing database for our chapters so that we can go back and review the visitors that have been to our meeting, and we can use this information later as well. For example, let's say you're having a visitors day. Why not re-invite people who were invited before? Maybe BNI wasn't right for them 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago, but maybe it's right for them now. But we can only do that if we're capturing the visitor information in BNI Connect. So again, if you can get your members to register their prospective visitors, everybody should have this option, register a prospective visitor. They can do that inside BNI Connect, or they can send the invite, which has the RSVP. If you do it within BNI Connect, it's pretty much the same form. It's just on the inside of the system instead of on a web page. And then after the meeting, the step that the visitor host or the secretary treasurer is going to take is right here, manage registered visitors and mark attendance. So now that the visitor has shown up to the meeting, I can now look up all of the visitors that were registered within a time period, for example. Here we have the John Snow. We also had some Visi Visitor and some other people that were registered. So let's say that Visi Visitor never showed up. I can go ahead and delete this person out of here if I want to. That will delete their registration. It'll take them out of our registered visitors. Let's say that Visi Visitor called and said they actually want to come to this week's meeting instead. I can go in and edit this record, and I can change the visit date. For example, let's say they want to go to next week's meeting. I can do that. That will resend them the link with confirming their new registration details as well. But let's say that, it's really the 5th and John Snow did actually show up. We can click edit, and now we have the option to mark this person as having attended the meeting. So rather than having to fill out a whole new record, John Snow here did most of the hard typing for us already. All we need to do is verify this information. We do have to verify who invited them. And a very important thing pops up. Once I choose visitor attended, you'll see there is an option right below it that says add visitor to POMS. And what that means is Jeremy Walsh going to get 1 in his visitor record in the POMS report? He's going to get credit for inviting that person. And there's times when that answer should be no. And specifically, we only want to record visitors as having attended in the POMS report. Now, we can add as many visitor records to the system as we want to, right? You can have the same person in 12 times if you want, other members that might have visited. We're keeping our visitor spreadsheet, so to speak. But when it comes to the POMS report, if we're recording the same person and giving them credit 2, 3, 4 times in a row, our chapter traffic lights will tank. And it's because one of the metrics in the traffic lights report is conversion ratio. So how many visitors are becoming members? And we measure that by the number of visitors according to the POMS divided by the number of new members in that time period. So if the same visitor is showing up in the POMS 2, 3, 4 times, that will lower that. So we can verify the information, go down and choose whether to send the follow-up email or not. Let's say that you're doing this a couple of weeks back. It would be kind of embarrassing to send a follow-up email saying, yeah, thanks for visiting recently 2 months ago, right? I'm going to go ahead and submit this visitor record. You'll notice that John Snow will be deleted out of the visitors that are registered, and they'll go into his own visitors database. And that's all there is to this part of it. Once we have visitors entered into the system, we also have our Manage Visitors function. where we can basically go back, and I'll show you some reports as well, but you can go back and see all of the people that have really ever visited the chapter, because now we have a database of all of our visitors. And of course, if they didn't pre-register, you can always click the Add Visitor button to add them after the fact. All right, so that's visitors. Any quick questions on visitors? All right, let's take a look at the meeting management, a couple of options under here. The primary function under here is the management of the weekly POMS report. And the weekly POMS report, again, this is the bread and butter of what we're keeping track of in BNI. We're keeping track of how many referrals people have given and received and how many one-to-ones people are having. This is our accountability piece of BNI. So with that said, on a weekly basis, typically the vice president needs to go back to their office and click on Enter POMS Report. Now, if you're using the papers, what that means is you're going to sort all those referral slips and one-to-one slips into little piles, and we're going to enter them into the system. Or if you're using the online slips, again, that data will be automatically entered for you. So if I go to Enter POMS Report, the first thing that we'll be presented with is any visitors that have been added since the last meeting. Now, it doesn't matter, when they were added for. So they could be a visitor that we finally caught up on from 2 or 3 weeks ago, or they could have just been added, immediately following the meeting. Either way, what you have to do now as the vice president, now remember, the secretary treasurer, the visitor host, is usually the one that's entering the visitors, but now you as the vice president have to approve that visitor. And what you're really saying is, I'm approving giving Jeremy Walsh credit for inviting John Snow in the POMS report for October 5th. Do I want to give that person credit, yes or no? And then I can also check to see if that credit was already in the POMS report if I wanted to. Now, if the POMS report's already completed, it will open up the POMS for you and automatically submit it again. Or if it's in draft mode, it will just put it in there. And I can go ahead and click yes. All right, and then the next thing to do is to pick a date, and we're going to enter a POMS report for that date. Now, unfortunately, I'd used October 5th on a demonstration of just this the other day, so it's telling me that I already have a POMS for that date, so let me just go ahead a week here. Now, I do not recommend on a normal basis entering POMS in the future. These should be entered after your meeting, so just everybody pretend that it's actually October 13th, and I'm entering the POMS report for October 12th. Okay, now here's what happens once you get the POMS going. It basically just sets up a spreadsheet for you to fill in all of the information. Now you'll notice that there is some information in here already. You see that there's, Ricky Martin has a referral given, a one-to-one. Becky Goodwin here has a referral received, and Becky Perode has a $1,000 in thank you for closed business, and let's see if I scroll over, Ricky Martin also has 8 CEUs. What that means is that somebody's been using the online slips, and I can check this by clicking the slips audit report. So just like you have the pile of paper slips sitting in front of you, this is kind of your pile of electronic slips for that meeting. And I can see Ricky Martin input those 8 CEUs. Ricky Martin had a one-to-one with Chuck Kronos. Ricky Martin had a referral given to Becky Goodwin. And we can't see who input the thank you for closed business. We can only see the person that's credited with that thank you for closed business. Now keep in mind, you still have full control over the POMS report, so even though these are automatically entered, if somebody also puts in a paper slip thanking Becky for money, you can go and increase this to 20,000 or whatever else you might need to do. So let's go through this very quickly. The first part is just taking attendance. That's this PALMS, present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. Now RGI, RGO, RRI, RRO. RG stands for referrals given. RR stands for referrals received. An I is an inside referral. O is an outside referral. So an inside referral is when two members do business with each other. So two members are doing business with each other. In other words, it's called an inside referral because the relationship stayed inside the chapter. I didn't introduce anybody from the outside world into the chapter relationship. So that would be, for example, Alfred E. Newman needs to use Albert Camus' services. So he refers himself to Albert Camus. That would be an inside referral from Alfred, or given by Alfred, and received by Albert. On the other hand, if, let's say, Bob Jones introduces his mother to Jamie Jones, that would be a referral given outside from Bob and a referral received outside from Jamie. Visitors, obviously, if you're entering your visitors in, those will be automatically populated. One-to-ones are when two members have a meeting with one another. So let's say QWERTY here had a one-to-one with Johnny Depp. They would both get a 1. Thank you for closed business is when somebody is recognized for a referral that closes. It does only take whole dollar amounts, so you can't put in, a period or anything like that. It will give you an error message there saying whole dollar figures only. And you do have to scroll over a little bit to get to the CEUs. And CEUs are chapter education units. So for example, today's training, you want to make sure that you submit a CEU slip for 1 credit for today's session. Now when you're all done, down at the bottom, you have a couple of options. The first one is what you'll use most often, and that is submitting a POMS report. You just click on Submit POMS, and that's kind of all there is to it. That means that you are satisfied with the results and you are closing that meeting out. It now becomes a part of all of the permanent statistics in the system. Mark as holiday means that your chapter didn't meet that week. And it's important to go in as soon as appropriate after the meeting would have happened in order to then submit it as a holiday. When you do submit it as a holiday, any online slips will be automatically pushed to next week's meeting, so they'll still get counted. And it also takes this meeting kind of out of the rotation. So there's a lot of statistics in BNI Connect that are, based on how many referrals per member per week, for example. Well, this will take this week out of that count, so your statistics end up being higher. Save as draft. If you have to take a phone call, let's say that you're doing this at your office or you're doing this at home and the kids start making a racket and you need to run away from the computer for a little bit. BNI Connect does have a 30-minute timeout, so if you walk away from the system for more than a half hour, when you come back, you'll be logged out and you will have lost everything that you were doing. So if you do need to walk away, click on Save as Draft so that you can come back to it later. Discard means that I completely messed up this report. I put all the thank you for closed business in the CEU column, and I marked the attendance wrong it was really the attendance from 3 weeks ago. Whatever it is that you messed up, you want to start all over again, click the discard button. I'm going to go ahead and submit this one though and click OK. Now we'll see a quick review of everything that we put in, and that's all there is to it. If we made a mistake on here, we can always click Unlock POMS in order to correct that. All right, so going back to the operations menu, that's how to enter POMS. You can also go in and review, go to Meeting Management. You can review any individual POMS summary. So, and this isn't just from your term, you can go back to, POMS reports from October 11th. If there was a long-standing mistake in there sometime, I can go in and see any of those reports, click on them and see the details of that report. And if needed, I could always unlock it in order to go back in and make those corrections. All right, so that's the POMS report. Any quick questions on the POMS report? All right, so the next thing under meeting management is a pretty simple one. It is the view edit speakers. View edit speakers. Now, we do want to enter our speaker rotation into BNI Connect, at least for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I don't recommend doing much more than that. Again, this is usually done by the Secretary Treasurer. And entering the speakers has a couple of benefits. First of all, it puts them onto your chapter website. So the chapter website, a public website, by the way, is going to show your next 4 weeks or next month worth of speakers. So it's a great little added bit of publicity out there for the members. And then the second reason is it will send email reminders. So 6 days and 3 days before the meeting, the member will get a reminder saying, hey, by the way, this week you're our featured presenter. Please make sure you're prepared and bring it to our prize, and just make sure that they know about that upcoming speaking. And then the second thing is that the Secretary Treasurer will get a notification. They get a reminder 3 days before, letting them know who's speaking. And finally, we can just keep a history now of all the speakers going forward. To assign a speaker, just choose the date. Now, if I want to see which speakers have already spoken, I can go back and view the speaker rotation. And I can see that I have speakers actually already assigned through the end of October, but I don't have anybody in November yet. So let me assign somebody for November by just clicking on Assign Speaker. I choose the date they're going to speak. November 2nd, let's say. Select the person. So let's say Jeremy Walsh is going to be speaking about BNI Connect. Okay, I click Submit. Now that speaker is assigned. That's really all there is to assigning speakers. And as I said, if I go to the BNI Burr chapter website, so if I go to antarcticreferrals.com and I go to find a chapter and I go find the Burr chapter and I go to their chapter website, I can see these upcoming speakers down here at the bottom for the chapter speakers and what they're going to be talking about. All right, going back to the operations menu, just one more thing to show you guys while we're here before we go through a couple of the reports in the system. So the mentoring program works very similar to the speaker rotation, and you're just assigning people to this. And as I said before, this is really, it's an email campaign, so to speak, that will send out an email to the mentor and the mentee on a weekly basis, letting them know where they should be in the mentoring process. So I'm going to choose a start date. So when would I like them to start getting the emails? Now you may find that it's better, I know like our chapter meets on Thursdays, so maybe I want to make sure they receive those emails on Thursdays or maybe even on Friday after the meeting to get them thinking about that, so you can kind of pick what day they would start. And I just choose let's say it's going to be Marky Mark is going to be mentoring Jeremy Walsh. Click Submit, and again, that's all there is to it. If you need to change that, just click on View Mentor Mentee. You can choose and see how many mentors are set up here. Just choose a date range. And here we go. I have, for example, Marky Mark doing Jeremy Walsh and Bob with Mike. Now those two are actually in progress already, so I can edit them. These ones in the past, Adam successfully mentored Johnny Depp. The only thing I can do with that one is to remove that record because that has already been completed. All right, and that, my friends, is basically the day-to-day functions here under the operations menu. Before we move on to any reports, do I have any questions about the operations functions? All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of the reports in the system. So if I go to reports, now we only have about 10 minutes left or so till the top of the hour. So what I'd like to tell you is I will not have time to go through every single report today. I mean, again, if you want to hang out and stay for another half hour or so, I'd be happy to go through all the reports. But I assume most people, I do like to be respectful of your time. So if you have other jobs to get back to, clients to return phone calls for, that's perfectly fine as well. But the important thing is that with the reports, you really can't break anything. All right, the reports are read only. So I highly encourage you to just go in and poke around, click on a report, see what comes up. And if you have any questions about what's showing up on the screen, just let me know. I'm happy to answer those questions for you. All right, but really the top reports for leadership teams are going to be really the top 5 or 6 reports that are here, and then a couple others that are down a little bit further. But basically the member training report, this is exactly as it sounds, and it's going to let you know who has basically been through training. The thing that's really good about this particular report, though, is the fact that you can actually run this in the reverse. So there's another option here that says show never attended. So the obvious one is I can see who has taken a member success program, for example, like secretary treasurers. When you're doing the speaker rotation, you're not supposed to assign anybody to be the feature presenter unless they've been through member success program. So the first thing you really need to do is check to see who has taken a member success program, which I can do and make sure that they're on the list as having taken the member success. Or if you want to do it in the reverse, I can find out who's never attended the member success program. And this is great because it not only shows me all the people that haven't taken it, but also when they started. So I can see here that QWERTY, they joined on the 1st of September. So they're getting to be, it's now 30 days since they've been a member. So John has a quick question. How can I verify that I have president's privileges? I'm the incoming president. I don't see all the options under reports. So are you not seeing any of the reports, or when you click on a report, you don't see anything happen on the right-hand side here? So if you're not seeing all of the reports, you don't see anything at all happening when, so if I click, for example, meeting notes report, you don't see anything on this side. There's a silly little bug that if you're at 90% on the Zoom, you'll see that nothing shows up on the right-hand side. All you do is click Control-0. That'll bring you back to 100% Zoom, or you can go higher than that, and that will allow the parameters to come back. Otherwise, if you click this profile thing down at the bottom, that will take you over to your profile. And the thing to do is to see to make sure that you have president listed here as one of your functions. Does that help, John? And if neither of those appear to be the case, please do shoot me an email, support@bniconnect.com. All right, support@bniconnect.com. All right, so that's the training report, the next report. And John, this is also where this might be able to help you out if you can actually see the reports. If you go to chapter roster report and click go, this will actually show you all of the assignments for the chapter. So we can see here, I have a bit of a problem in that nobody is assigned to my Burr chapter in the leadership team. So that means that if our president, much like yourself, John, if my president isn't assigned here, that means that he doesn't yet have the permissions to do that. My vice president wouldn't be able to go in and actually do the vice president's POMS report because he doesn't have the permissions yet. So make sure that your people are listed here. If they're not, then that is a call to your regional office, to your executive director or your regional admin, who can fill out the leadership team for you. Down at the bottom is also all the list of the members in the chapter, so you can double check them, what they do for a living, what their company is, and this is also acts as a quick phone list. To the right, we have a very brief 90-day view of the PALMS report. Now, here's what I like about this one, is that this is, to me, this is kind of a red flag report. What I like to do is to scan this quickly and to see, who's not had a one-to-one in the last 90 days, or who hasn't given a lot of referrals or received a lot of referrals in the last 90 days, and try to reach out to them and re-engage them and see if there's a way that we can help them. So John says that he does see himself listed in the right position. So here's the other thing, John, is that your region has full control over which reports they allow you to use. And it might just be that your executive director has turned off a lot of the reports that that they aren't finding useful. So that, again, would be a quick discussion to have with your executive director. And if you see a report that is on the webinar today that you think is really great, and I would just talk to your executive director and they may be able to turn that back on. Does that make sense, John? Cool. All right, the next one down is very similar to the roster. It is the membership dues report. This is going to show you everybody that is up for renewal in the next year or so. Well, actually forever, but you'll see that we have the people that are due in November and December. Those are going to be highlighted at the top of the list. And we go all the way down to my void member here is due in, 2036 it looks like. So it'll be a while before they come up for renewal. We can also see if they're active or if they're pending renewal here as well. And of course, we have people that have become late and people that have expired or dropped in the past 30 days or so. All right, now the other quick thing about this report is, yeah, of course we're going to be looking at the people that are due in the next 2 months because they should be already engaged in the renewal process. And now's the time for the membership committee review to say yes or no whether we're going to renew the member. But I also recommend looking a little bit further out. I recommend looking out about 6 months or so. So really we want to be looking out into like April, about that time frame. So these people that are due maybe in March and in June, Thea and Jamie here, because in 6 months they're going to be up for renewal. That's still enough time to change behaviors. So if either of them are struggling in the chapter or have become disengaged in the chapter, 6 months is enough time to coach them and to get them, re-involved in the referral process. All right, I'm going to skip down a couple here to the summary PALMS report. The meeting notes report is also a great report. It's really just for taking notes at the meeting, so you can print these out and basically leave one in front of every member so that they can take notes about what people are asking for during their presentations. The summary PALMS report is the bread and butter, again, of our statistics. You can run this for any date range. By default, it's going to show you the last 6 months worth of membership. However, you can choose any date you want. So if you want year to date, you can change this to January 1st through today, for example. And this would give me a year to date. You can also choose whether or not dropped member names are showing on the list. So if this is selected, then you'll see every single member that had been a member of the chapter during that time, even if they've since dropped out of the chapter. That's actually a great thing to do. Once in a while, I like to run this report for, let's say, 10 years or 8 years in this case, and take a look down at some of the people that, Bruce Banner. I can see Bruce Banner here and Barry Bonds. They were really good members. Maybe I'd like to invite them back to the chapter at some point. All right, the next thing is the absence report, and the absence report will basically show you when people are absent. So this is part of kind of the new process as well, because we have moved from a, 3 absences within a 6-month period, meaning April to October, then October to April, to now it is 3 absences within a rolling 6-month period. And that's an important distinction to make. By the way, BNI didn't make up this rule. This was a policy change that was initiated with the International Board of Advisors. So if you don't know what the International Board of Advisors is it is a group of members from around the world, and they're a very active and dedicated group of members. Now, they can't be directors, they can't be executive directors, they can only be members. And what happens is if BNI is having a problem of some sort, in this case, we were having a problem with absences because what would happen is we'd have huge absenteeism in the end of March and the end of September. And the reason being that everybody looked at the absentee policy as vacation days from BNI. So, and with vacation with a lot of companies, it's one of those use it or lose it. So at the end of each of these periods, they would just take an extra couple of weeks off of BNI. Now, if you think about that, at 6 absences within a year, that means that you're out of your chapter more than 10% of the time. Not to mention, that's just absences without subs, not to mention some, maybe you had a sub a couple of times during that time period. Now you're looking at maybe 15, 20, 25% of time away. So your relationships suffer because of that. So when they were presented with this problem they were having, that they came up with the solution that, well, it should just be within a rolling 6 months. So the way to check that is you take attendance at the meeting. Then after you mark, you take note of who was absent. You can come to the absence report, which will automatically default to a 6-month period. And let's say that, Art Garfunkel was absent this week. I could look and see that this was his first absence, so I want to make sure that I, give him the first accountability step and make sure I give him a call to let him know that he was missed. If it was somebody's second absence, they would get that accountability letter as well. There is also another one here called if I have to scroll down a little bit, but it's called the PALMS Attendance Report. Also set to a rolling 6 months, but again, you can change these reports as well, but by default, it's going to be rolling 6 months. Now, what I like about this one is it will start to show, for example, when people were absent. And because it's rolling 6 months, this is a great report because you'll see, like I can see here that, in 4 weeks, that absence will roll off and they'll be back to a perfect attendance situation. All right, so we are at the top of the hour. Now, one very last pointer I want to show you guys, if you go back to your home screen, one thing you'll notice is you have My Business, you have My Network. Now, My Network is the social media kind of side of things. It has connections and groups and testimonials and things like that. This also has a local document library where your region has uploaded certain documents. They could be visitor sign-in sheets. They could be member traffic lights or just things that they thought you might find helpful. But below that, there's also a thing that says chapter. And what this is all of your favorite functions. So by default, they'll come up with a list, but you can customize this list to whatever you want. This is basically everything accessible under Operations chapter, Reports chapter, Network. It's all the things that you have access to that you can customize this list to be. If I click Configure, I can X out of any of these, and they'll come out of my Active menu, and they'll go over into my Unused menu. But if I put a check mark in it, I can put a check mark, and let's say Email My Chapter. I'm going to use that a lot. So I'm going to put that up at the top of the list. And let's say the meeting notes report I'm going to use all the time. And the, where is it? So let me just type in PALMS. Oh, here it is. Enter PALMS. I'm going to put that in. And once I submit this and close out, you'll see that my list has changed and now it's just my favorite list. So now instead of going to, operations, operations chapter, meeting management, enter POMS. You go to chapter, enter POMS, and it will take us right there with a couple of less clicks. John says you have suggested configurations list. By default, it will try to order them for you based on your position. So if I click on restore defaults, this will give me the recommended thing for my position. But again, it's up to you to go ahead and customize it with your favorite things. And again, that depends on your particular region, and it depends on what your role is in the system. For presidents, you're probably going to be using the reports more often than not. So maybe you want the email, my chapter, and the reports up at the top of that list. Does that make sense, John? Does that help? Awesome. All right. We are at the top of the hour, by the way. What I'd like to do is to open this up to any questions, but while we're putting any questions in, I just want to remind you that this is being recorded. As embarrassing as that first little part of it was, this is being recorded, will be made available for you to review, both on the support site and on the YouTube channel, so feel free to use them. Now, you can also you don't necessarily have to wait for this one to become available. There are other recordings already up there. So if I go to the support site by clicking the question mark, I then have live and recorded webinars. So the upcoming webinars are listed here. A good referral for me is to take this hyperlink and share it with your other chapter members. I go through an entire series of BNI Connect webinars on a monthly basis. Our next one is going to be this one, the chapter goals for leadership teams. On Thursday, we're going to do chapter web pages. Then the following week, we're going to start with our members series. So again, a good referral for me is to tell your new members about these webinars, especially if you think it would be helpful for them, to get started in BNI Connect right away, right when they join. And again, the recordings, I can go and I have uploaded all the recordings for September, including a copy of this particular webinar that was just done on Thursday of last week. Here we have the leadership team tools and reports from September 28th. So they are all up here already, so feel free to check them out. BJ asks, will new member emails automatically be entered in the entire chapter list? So yes, depending on the process in your region on who's entering it into BNI Connect, but as soon as it's entered into BNI Connect, all the reports get updated and they show up on the roster, they'll show up in the email my chapter. As far as members go, you will be automatically connected with them in the connections. So yes, they will. As soon as it's entered by either your chapter or if it's entered at the regional office, then they will appear there automatically. So does that help, BJ? So Karen says, how do you avoid entering info twice if some but not all members are entering their personal info? Karen, are you referring to the online slips? So when the passing referrals and stuff on the homepage? Well, first of all, it's usually fairly obvious. I mean, the best answer is get your whole chapter to do the online slips. In my chapter, we switched over about 2 years ago, and we've never looked back. Our vice president just said one day, listen, we're still going to have the paper slips at the meeting so that we can show the visitors what's going on and stuff like that, but I'm not counting the slips. Either you enter it in BNI Connect or it didn't happen. Now, that's a hardline approach, and talk to your director, consultant, or executive director if before going down that road. But even so, most members are only passing, 1 or 2 referrals per week, and it's fairly obvious if it gets double counted. For example, we go and we submit the referral slip. I'll see that in the POMS report. So if I go back to the POMS report here, And in that slips audit report, that's where you will see all of the details of those slips. So let me see if I can pull one up for you here. I'm going to try to get basically on my training server, I'm going to see if I can get a better example for you of a slip that has, or of a chapter that has more, basically more referrals entered in. So if I can pull up an old copy of my own chapter, for example. So I'm logging in as myself now, so let me see if I can get an old copy from my chapter. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to view a POM summary. Oops, let me switch to the United States. I'm going to go to Rhode Island, where I am. And my chapter is the Wakefield chapter. So let me go back in time here. See if I can find some completed reports. So, for example, now this is a backup system, so we have information only from April. But what happens is as soon as slips start getting entered for the week, what we'll see is a draft has been created. And this draft will have all of those slips that have been entered up until that point. So that one didn't have a ton of them. Let me see if I can get one that has a little bit more information here. All right, so if I click on the slips audit report, again, I can see this information that has already been added in there, and we'd be able to see the details of that. So if Jeremy Walsh put in another referral to Liz Berman on that same week, you're going to enter this in. It'll be pretty obvious that, oh, Jeremy had a paper referral and and an online referral at the same time. Usually common sense wins out there. Does that help? Does that make sense, Karen? All right, let's see. John says, our previous chapter president had a template that summarized the previous meeting and upcoming speaker info. Can you suggest templates available through BNI? I can send you an email copy of this, of his previous chapter email if you would like. Sure, feel free to send that along to me. We don't so much have a template for that, unfortunately. Most presidents do that on their own. However, I do know that they were putting something up in the BNI store. I don't know if it's up there yet, but there is I think they're calling it like a placemat or something like that, that does kind of organize all that information into a nice format like that. So it's called bnipromos.com. That's our BNI store, bnipromos.com. And if you go to bnipromos.com, again, that's where you can get all sorts of stuff. You don't, that particular thing, I don't know if it's here. Let's see if I can find it. I don't know if they have it up here yet, but they have, oh, no, not that one. It doesn't look like, I don't think they have it yet, but there's a downloadable form. Oh, wait, here it is. The small roster sheet here. And again, there's no cost to this, but here's basically a quick thing that you can download the template and be able to summarize it. So there's one for you. Does that help, John? Is that kind of what you were looking for? I know when I was the president, I would I would just do a quick email myself and send that out to my chapter. Cool. Any other questions? Questions, comments, concerns, compliments, criticisms? I'll take them all. All right. If there's no more questions, again, I invite you to join me for the other parts of this leadership team series. Again, we'll be back tomorrow with the going through the chapter goals. Again, that one is a much shorter webinar, as are the rest of the webinars for the rest of the month. All the rest of the webinars are 30 minutes or less. So I invite you to take a couple of minutes and join me. Again, tomorrow we are going to be doing the chapter goals. And then on Thursday, we're going to take a day off. Thursday, we're going to talk about how to customize your BNI Connect web pages. So that's a great one. And John says, thank you from Anchorage, Alaska. Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you for being here today and joining us. And thank you guys even more for taking on these leadership team roles in your chapters. It is so important. I know that you'll find it a very rewarding year. If you have any questions at all along the way, feel free to email me. Again, it's support@bniconnect.com. Again, if you do support@bni.com, that's going to go for policy questions at headquarters. You have technology questions, support@bniconnect.com. All right, on that note, thank you guys so much for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. In the meantime, happy connecting.